When you work in unfaith, the Lord sometimes lets you go your own way, and it will have eternal consequences. The eternal consequences show up today. In the year 600 and something, some people say 666, it wasn't exactly that, we see Mohammed, in parentheses, the prophet Mohammed, which he was no prophet. Remember that his last wife was 7 years old or 6 years old, you know. We see the prophet Mohammed trying to solidify the Arab nations, the Arab people. Now, the Arab people were desert people, nomadic people. They worshipped 365 gods. These gods and the images of these gods were all in a closet like. Mohammed realizes that in order to call these people into unity, he has to abolish 364 of these gods and make one god the god. And the one he makes is the moon god. That's why you see the crescent moon and the star. And his name is Allah. He is not Yahweh. His name is Allah. And Allah will be the God of the desert, the God of the Arabs, and he is one, and he has no son. All right? But you see, it all started with Father Abraham. When Sarai said, we have no children, what are we going to do? Go sleep with Hagar. It all started in unfaith. Everything that is unfaith is sin. St. Paul tells us that. So now let's look at our lives, your life and my life, okay? When we are not operating in faith, I want you to know we are operating in sin. When we go our own way and we do not heed the word of the Lord, we are operating in sin. Sin has eternal consequences. It messes up the apple cart. When we do not walk by faith, we walk by sight. When we walk by sight, we are displeasing to God. Because our father Abraham believed God, and God counted it to him as righteousness. But our father Abraham, at a certain point, decided that, you know what, maybe God doesn't know better. Maybe I need to do things my way. And you know what I tell you, in hell today, they are singing, I did it my way, in 5-part harmony. Because to do it my way is sin, and sin has eternal consequences. It's real, okay? When we do not walk by faith, we walk in sin. Now, let us now look at your life and my life, because it's very important that we live by faith and not by sight. It's very important that we trust Jesus, and that if we really love Jesus, as I said yesterday, who is the faithful and good servant that the Lord finds working when he comes again, even though he's delayed. So therefore, faith has to have hands. You see, Abraham believed God, and it was counted him as righteousness, but he left his land, the land of the Ur of Chaldeans, and he went 320 miles down the road. Faith has to have legs. Faith has to have works. Because without works, faith is dead. We are not saved by our works. Works are a response of our faith. If Abraham believed God and stayed in the Ur of Chaldeans, he would not be justified. He never would have got to Canaan. He never would have seen the promised land. And the promised land would never have been given to his descendants. All right? When we do not walk by faith, we are in sin. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard that preached, but I preach it. Now let's look at the Archdiocese of Boston. All right? Let's look at what we are doing with our hospital experience. We have this Caritas Christi experience. How many hospitals? 8 hospitals, whatever it is. On the board of Caritas Christi, there is a woman who was the head of NARAL, which is the National Abortion Federation League. She's on the board of Caritas Christi. I don't think that's faith. On the board of Caritas Christi, there are 6 members that donated to pro-abortion candidates, thousands and thousands of dollars. I do not think that's fake. Now that Caritas Christi is joining with the Centene Corporation so that we can care for the poor people in Dorchester and the poor people in Hyde Park, we have to bring referrals to the Centene Corporation for people who want abortions. We will not do abortions per se, but we are joining with an organization that we have to refer that they have abortions. We are living in unfaith, and unfaith have eternal consequences. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm not saying this to be hateful. I'm saying this on July 1st, if the Cardinal doesn't get out of this deal, this will have eternal consequences for the Archdiocese of Boston. And you know what? If the Cardinal does get out of this deal on July 1st, we will herald him the greatest hero in Massachusetts. I will herald him the greatest hero in Massachusetts for walking by faith, for living in the Spirit. You see, you can never do evil in order to do good. Brian Hare taught me that. He is the one responsible for all this happening. Brian Hare. Somewhere along the line, he got derailed. Somewhere along the line, I think he lost his faith. Oh, he might say he believes, but how can you join yourself with the prostitute if you yourself have been joined to Christ? That's what St. Paul says. The prostitute would be the pro-abortion mentality, as John Paul called it, the society of death, the culture of death. How can we join with Centene, who will care for the poor in Dorchester and Hyde Park and East Boston? But we would have to refer to them people that want abortions and sterilization. You never do evil in order to do good. And if you do, you walk in unfaith. And if you walk in unfaith, you have eternal consequences. Look at what's happened. We've got our friends, the Arabs, who want the destruction of the Holy Father, the destruction of the great state in America, the destruction of Israel. That's what happens when Sarah said to Abraham, go sleep with Hagar. Eternal consequences that we're dealing with today because of sin. See, I just want to present this picture that when we, you and I, do not live by faith, the eternal consequences. You know? Eternal consequences.